If you feel like you have chronically tight hamstrings, but you're passively stretching constantly and not getting anywhere or feeling any better over time, then you probably need to switch to some more active hamstring stretching or kinetic hamstring stretching, which is what I'm going to be breaking down for you today. So what we'll be doing is not only going into your end range and really isolating that hamstring stretch, but we're also going to be teaching those tissues how to move, engage, and go in and out of that stretch so that you eventually own that range of motion and that those changes in hamstring length are permanent over time. We'll be using a dowel or a mobility stick, maybe a yoga block if you are very mobile or if you feel like you want to add an extra challenge to this movement. But the main premise of this is that less is more. So we want to really isolate that hamstring stretch. Doesn't matter how far you get into that stretch, you're going to be getting more out of it by pulling back a little bit and doing a little bit less. So follow along with me, and I'm going to show you how we stretch the hamstrings actively. So we're going to take our stick from a tall standing position and we're going to place the bottom of it out away from you. And we're going to place the top of it right on your shoulder. So this is going to be a nice tactile feedback cue for where your body's going to go in space. So you've got that attached to the shoulder. You can hold it hand over hand right at your chest. And then you're going to take the left leg. So whichever shoulder this stick is connected to, your same leg is going to go out in front of you. So we're not going to hike the leg up really high. We're not going to reach that leg out super far in front. We actually want a pretty small position from here. So I'm going to stick my leg out so that my heel of the left foot is in line with the toes on my right foot. So this right leg is going to soften as we go into our stretch. This left leg is going to stay perfectly straight the whole time. So we're going to isolate this stretch, keep that leg nice and straight. We're going to drive the stick down into the floor, just about 30% of your max effort, so nothing crazy. And you're going to soften the right knee as you hinge those hips back and walk the hands down the stick just slightly. Once you barely start to feel a hamstring stretch, I want you to stop. Okay, so I'm starting to feel a stretch in the hamstrings here. This is where I'm going to stop. And I want you to check in with your body position. Okay, we are isolating the hamstrings, not the back. Okay, so we don't want this lower back to be involved in this stretch at all. So I want you to anteriorly tilt the pelvis. If your pelvis is a bowl of water, I want you to dump the water out of the front, tip the tailbone up behind you, and keep that spine almost arched here. And you're going to reach those hips back in space. So driving that stick into the floor and almost pulling that stick towards you is going to help achieve that. Now, this is also directly related to your hip hinge. So if you are feeling like you have weak or tight hamstrings from deadlifting, you might want to check your hip hinge position. If you have low back pain in your deadlifts, it could also be that hinge position as well. So we are grooving that hip hinge position here in this stretch too. So we're just hanging out here, holding this position. Pull those toes up away from the floor and make sure you can breathe. You can also do this against a wall, pushing into the wall to pull those hips away. Once again, make sure that this knee, the right knee is bent, the left knee is straight. So we are going to start some isometrics here, activating this stretch. Right now, we're just in a passive stretch. We're just kind of like falling into this position, but we're going to activate it. So the easiest way to do that is you're going to lengthen the floor between the feet. So I'm almost going to try to drive that left heel forward and drive that right foot back. So you might feel the front of the quads on that left side working here. And then we're going to simply reverse that movement. I'm going to drive that left heel back and push that right hip forward. That's going to pull that left hip back even more away from that left heel. And there's where you're going to feel a deeper stretch in the hamstrings. Let's try that again. Pull that floor apart between the 2 feet, drive the right foot back, the left foot forward, right? You might even feel some tightness in the low back here as you do that. And then reverse it, feel the tightness in the lower back dissipate as we focus more on the hamstring length and that pure hip hinge. Let's do that one more time. Lengthen, hold, and shorten. Pull that left heel back towards you. We're going to keep shortening. So here's where we're going to stay, that deep stretch of the hamstrings. If you can get a little further now into that stretch, go ahead and slide a little further down. Now we're going to add some rotation of the leg. Keep that leg left leg nice and straight. We're gonna do 3 rotations each direction, and then we're gonna come up out of it, okay? So we're still driving that heel back towards you, leaning back into those hips, and we're gonna turn the toes away from the center of your body. So we're turning the knee and the toes, rotating that leg from the hip. Now we're hitting more of the outside hamstring here. Feel how that stretch kind of shifts and changes here. Then we're gonna switch, going into internal rotation, turn the toes in. Now make sure that that doesn't move the hips. You can do this with your hips against a wall to make sure that the hips are not moving, okay? And that we're really just rotating from the hip, just the leg is going. Let's go back to external rotation. Continue to drag that heel back towards you and switch over to internal rotation. Once again, pulling that heel towards you. Keep that spine nice and straight. One more time, over to external rotation. Now we're training these tissues to be able to rotate that leg in this end range over to internal, which is teaching those tissues to really own this range of motion. Come back center, see if you can get a little further into it. Slowly walk your hands up and release. So we're not done with this side yet. We're gonna do one more piece of the movement. If you have your yoga block, if you'd like a little bit more of a challenge here, you're just gonna place your heel on that yoga block. So I'm gonna basically line up my right toes with the yoga block, place that left foot on the yoga block, set up my stick in the same exact way. Now when I'm going into that stretch, I want you to imagine that you're trying to lift that leg up towards you. So almost if you can lift it off the block, you're gonna lift, 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 lift until you can't actually lift it off the block. You're just trying to. You'll feel some tightness in the quads. Then you're going to drive the heel down into the block to come back up. That's when you're gonna really stress the tissues in the lengthened position of the hamstring. So when we are contracting the tissues here on the way up, we're pushing down using these hamstring muscles, which is going to strengthen those tissues in the lengthened position. Most of the time when we think of strengthening the hamstrings, we are thinking of strengthening them in the shortened position when the knee is bent, but we also want them to be strong in the lengthened position, something that you need for RDLs, even for things like running, as you extend that leg out in front of you and then pull that leg back towards you to switch and shift your weight. We need that strength in the hamstrings in the lengthened position. So that was a mouthful, but let's get into it. So we've got our setup here. You can have that leg elevated slightly if you have a strong active range of motion already in that hip flexion with the leg extended. We're gonna pull forward, pull up into that stretch, trying to lift the leg. Once again, don't let that lower back compromise this position and this work. We're trying to isolate, once again, less is more. Then we're gonna drive that heel down to pull the body up. Then let's do that again. Lift and pull into that stretch. Trying to lift that leg off the block or the floor. Feel the quads. Now drive down, feel the hamstrings. Let's do that again. Pulling into the stretch, lifting that leg up, hold, and then drive down to come back out of it. And let's do that 2 more times, pulling into it. So this might not feel like you are stretching as deep as you were before, but this is actually drive down, going to be increasing the strength in those hamstrings so that you can now use that increased range of motion or that increased stretch. So we're basically taking the stretch that we just did and drive down, and we're applying it in order to lock in the gains that we got from those stretches. So now let's switch to the right side. Okay, so we are hanging out in that end range for a while. We're gonna do those isometrics with lengthening and shortening the floor. We're gonna move in and out of those rotations, and then we're gonna finish with that kinetic stretching, pulling into that stretch, pushing out of it in order to really increase the capacity of that newfound range of motion. Okay, right leg is going to stick out in front of you. We want that heel in line with the toes or just beyond it. Bottom of the stick is angled away from you, attached to your right shoulder. We're gonna pull those hips up and back, kind of shifting back. Once again, you can place those hips on a wall. You can press your hands into a wall. You could even do this with a door frame, pushing the right hip into the wall and pushing your hands into the door frame out in front of you. But again, remember, less is more. So once you start to feel that hamstring stretch, That's it. We're going to pause there and work in that range of motion, and over time we can get a little bit deeper into it. So we're going to hang out here for another 10 seconds, just trying to make sure that the tailbone is tipped up behind you. Once again, we have that anterior pelvic tilt. Spine is nice and long, tailbone's tipped out behind you. We're kind of shifting back into that position here. We don't want the low back to be rounded. You might feel some tension in the lower back just to keep your body in this hip hinge position. And that's normal, but we don't want the low back to round. So now let's do some isometrics. We're gonna first lengthen the floor. So you're gonna try to push that right heel forward and drive that left leg back. Okay, so I'm feeling the glutes on my left hip and I'm feeling the quad of my right side to try to drive forward. Now we're gonna basically switch it up. So now I'm gonna feel the back side of this right leg and the front side of my left leg, and I'm really deepening that hip hinge, okay? Then we're gonna do that 2 more times. Pull that floor apart, so we're lengthening between those 2 feet, feeling the posterior side of the left hip, the anterior side of the right leg, and then we switch it. Okay, this is going to lengthen the back of that right leg even more. This is why we don't need to keep pushing down into that stretch. We can just increase that stretch by changing the intention of the tension. One more time, push those feet away from each other. And last time, reverse, drag that heel towards you. Okay, now we're gonna stay in this position. Keep dragging that heel back. See if you could tighten that quad a little bit here. And then we're gonna rotate from that hip. So once again, make sure those hips aren't going all over the place. If you need to back up against the wall, go ahead and do that. Turning those toes out, feeling the stretch on the outside of the hamstrings. Come back center, turn those toes in. Feeling a little more of a stretch on the inside of the hamstrings. Keep drawing that heel back towards you. Let's do that 2 more times. Got my hip against the wall. We're gonna go back to that external rotation, continuing to drag that heel back towards you. And internal rotation. Again, pulling that heel back. So as we rotate, we might kind of shift out of that stretch a little bit. So that's why it's always good once you get to that rotation to again think about pulling that heel back even more. So with mobility work, it's never once I'm there, I just hold it and that's it. It's always, can we keep going? Am I continuing to drive that heel back? You always have to remind yourself of those checkpoints. Let's come back center. Walk your hands up out of that position. We'll grab the yoga block if you would like. You can also do this one from the floor. We're gonna do that kinetic stretching, pulling into that stretch and pushing out of it. We want the same setup with the stick on the shoulder. Once again, this right leg stays nice and straight. I'm gonna engage that quad to try to lift that leg as I soften the left knee, trying to find that same stretch, but actively trying to lift the leg towards my chest. Now my leg is pushing down away from my chest as I come back up. So you should feel that hamstring engage as you're coming up out of that position. We're pulling into that stretch, lifting, 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 and then drive down, chest and the leg go away from each other. Let's do that 3 more times. So as I'm coming down, my chest is a positive magnet, my leg is a negative magnet. They're going towards each other. Now all of a sudden my leg turns into a positive magnet and they push, right? So they repel away from each other. Let's do that 2 more times, pulling into the stretch. Keep that knee straight. Remember, less is more, but continue to try to lift. And then push down. And then keep that tension all the way until we start again. So I'm still pushing down into that block. 1 more time, lifting up. Getting further into that stretch, trying to lift that leg higher. And push to come back up. And rest. All right. So this is how to get more out of your stretch. We want to stay there for an increased amount of time, activate that stretch, activate those tissues, and then see if we can pull in and out of that stretch actively to lock in the increased range of motion that we just found so that we actually have lasting results from our hamstring stretching. If you found this information helpful, please share, like, and subscribe. If you have any questions about this stretch, drop them in the comments below. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.